When I was 20, after finishing exams at the end of my second year at university, I attended a house party a little way out of town. It was a warm, late spring evening, and the exuberance of the end of the year was rampant among the partygoers. I was feeling exhilarated. I had completed my final psychology exam of the year, and after beginning my university career with considerable uncertainty about my career path, had discovered my true intellectual passion, a passion that remains with me even now over 40 years later. Late into the evening, after too many drinks, I was standing in the driveway with 3 friends, all of us equally intoxicated. The party was still in full swing, but we were ready to call it a night. We noticed a car in the driveway with the keys in the ignition. One of us, I do not remember whom, suggested we get in and drive back to college. It was a fair distance back. There were no buses, and we certainly couldn't walk. How else were we to get home? I took the seat on the front passenger side and promptly fell asleep. The next thing I remember, I was sitting by the side of the road with blood on my face and the flashing lights of police and ambulance vehicles all around. Evidently, we had gotten into an accident, and I had hit the windshield, which shattered, lacerating my forehead. My friends were talking to the police, but I was loaded into an ambulance and taken to the hospital for emergency surgery. I remember nothing more about that night. It was only after I awoke from surgery early the next morning that I learned what had happened. We had hit a group of fellow students cycling the same road back to town. Some of them had been injured, and one had been killed. I spent the next week in the hospital, in a bed on the plastic surgery ward as my head healed. It was a traditional hospital ward with perhaps a dozen beds, most of which were occupied by patients requiring skin grafts. I was there because the damage to my forehead was quite extensive, and the surgeon's team had explored the possibility of skin grafts to complete the work. But fortunately, they managed to stitch the wound in a patchwork that would allow much faster healing. It would also leave me with a scar reminding me of the accident for the rest of my life. On the ward, I was nervous to engage with my fellow inpatients, afraid that they would be aware of the reasons for my confinement. I lay in bed with little to do but reflect on what had happened and what I had done. My memory of the events of that night was patchy, not surprising given my intoxication and the injury I had sustained. But the facts were clear, and they were devastating. Even though societal attitudes toward drunk driving were not nearly as condemning then as they are today, I had taken a car that did not belong to me, enabled a friend to drive while drunk, and thereby participated in a chain of events that led to the death of a fellow student, as well as injuries to others. When something so drastic happens, it is natural for our thoughts to go first to the people in our lives who are affected. In my case, the list was long.